Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm glad you're here today. We are continuing summer at City North, and today I want to do like a really basic, fundamental message. And if you've been a Christian for a long time, or certainly if you've been around City North, you've heard me talk about this kind of thing a lot. But sometimes I think it's helpful to just kind of pause. If you've been a Christian for any length of time, sometimes it's helpful to pause and kind of just go back to basics. One of the cool things about this series is that all the messages are sort of one-off. They don't really build on each other, and so I've kind of gotten to pick what we're doing. And so today I just want to go very, very basic. And it's actually really interesting because when I was on vacation this summer, just a few weeks back, there was a day that we were out, and we went to Myrtle Beach, which, you know, for people that love the beach, great. I'm not a huge fan of the beach. It just doesn't do anything for me. I get bored and and is anybody with me? Is anybody like, yeah, the beach is overrated? Any beach is overrated? Yes, you're my people. So we're at Myrtle Beach, and we're out this one day on one of the boardwalks somewhere, and I don't know what it was, but it was raining a lot, and so at one point in time, I ended up, when we go on vacation every other year, we go with Vanessa's family. And so at this particular point in time, it was me, and I think there were five kids to my sides, and I was holding hands with two of them, and then there was holding hands lines. There were a lot of people. So we're getting close to, there's this big puddle coming up, not unlike Lake City North outside today. And so we're walking along, and everybody's like, watch out for the puddle, watch out for the puddle. So I very quickly am like, all right, everybody walk where I walk. Just walk, follow right where I, which with kids is kind of a crapshoot if that's going to happen or not, but, at least give it a shot. So I'm like, walk where I walk. So I find the least puddled place to cross, and I get across it. And for the most part, the kids got across unscathed. It was fantastic. Side note on that, give it up for my friend Grant, who was out there directing people around Lake City North this morning. We realized we probably needed someone to do that after several people walked straight through Lake City North. So, whoops. So, it was funny because I got to thinking about this and following, and sometimes when you're a pastor and you write messages for a living, like, life circumstances trigger these thoughts in your head, like following, walking in steps, following Jesus. So I did all these things. And so I want to talk to you just about following Jesus today. Like what does it mean to follow Jesus? One of the things that I am, depending on who you talk to, either incredibly gifted with or frustratingly gifted with, is a relentless, I can't turn off my brain going, why is it that way? Why is it that way? Why is it that way? Why do we do that? Is that the right way? And there's good qualities to that, and sometimes it's a very frustrating thing. But one of the things that is important to me, like massively important to me, is that nothing in our faith is just taken for granted and assumed that we know what it means or that we do it correctly. And I think that at the very core of it, following Jesus is one of the things that sometimes we don't actually think through. What does that mean? What does it mean to say, I follow Jesus? And my guess is that if I was to sit down with some of us individually and just say, hey, what do you think that means? What does it look like to follow Jesus? I'd probably get a lot of different answers. Probably mostly good answers, but a lot of different answers. And that's kind of the issue. Is at the core, I don't know that we always think about what simple things that we kind of take for granted mean. So I think that for some of us, that might look different than others, and they might be good things. But I wonder if for a lot of us, we would end up giving very religious answers to that question. I read my Bible. I pray. Those are good things. They're very good things. Well, I attend church services on a regular basis. Well, I send my kids to camp. Maybe there's a lot of religious kind of answers, but there's another thing that I've noticed a lot, which is that for a lot of people, there's this hang up where we're doing our best to follow Jesus, but there's like there's a guilt or a fear. We'll say a fear. There's a fear or a wonder of like, am I following him right? If Jesus was here, would he say that I'm following him? For a lot of us, we don't like to deal with our fear, and so maybe we kind of bury that. Maybe we try not to think about it. But I know that a lot of people that I've met, when I really start digging into their faith, that's one of the cool things about being a pastor, is that I get to hear people's faith journeys. I get to hear these stories, and oftentimes people are very open with me about their struggles and their fears and their worries and things like that. And I hear a lot like, I wonder if God's mad at me, or I wonder if God, I wonder. And what I want to do today is I want to just make this as simple as possible. How do I follow Jesus? My hope is that if you've been a Christian for a long time, I've been a Christian, I'm 35, I've been a Christian for 30 years. Okay, basically my whole life. This is something that as I was writing it was a good reminder to me. My hope is if you've been a Christian a long time, this is going to be a good kind of return to the basics. Perhaps if you're newer to faith, this might be a good place for you just to kind of ground yourself and anchor yourself. Because what happens the longer you follow Jesus is that it's easy to complicate it. It's really easy to complicate it. So I want to make it as simple as possible. What does it mean to follow Jesus? Fortunately, Jesus told us what it looks like to follow Jesus. That's a good place to start. So in the book of Matthew, Jesus is talking to his disciples. Now, his disciples, if you're not real familiar with the scriptures, Jesus' disciples were his closest followers. So Jesus was relatively famous in the first century in Jerusalem and in Judea and in Galilee, in kind of the ancient Near East. And he would travel all around the countryside, and people would just follow him. But there were these 12 guys that, I did 7 on my hands, but pretend that's 2 5s. Sometimes ADHD just bites. Like, it's 7 just now. So there were these 12 guys who followed Jesus around more closely than anybody else. And Jesus had specifically called them. I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. But there's these 12 guys. Jesus is teaching them. His whole goal is to teach them everything they need to know so that they can eventually carry his message forward without him. So Jesus is talking to the disciples. This is what he says in Matthew chapter 16, starting in verse 24. He says to his disciples, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me." I love this. Jesus says, if you want to be my follower, you have to follow. Go back for a sec for me. If you want to be my follower, follow. So this is where sometimes I think the simplicity of things gets lost. If you want to be a follower of Jesus, what does it mean? Well, you follow Jesus. You follow. In this case, Jesus hasn't gone to the cross yet. So when he says, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, he's kind of foreshadowing what's to come. He's giving the disciples a picture, something that they're going to remember in the end. It's about sacrifice. There's a lot that you can pull out of here. But what I want to focus on is follower. If you want to be my follower, you've got to go where I go. You can't go your own way. You've got to go where I go. You can't choose your steps. You've got to follow in my steps. There's a famous leadership phrase, and I don't know if you know it, I might get it a little bit wrong, but I'm going to do my own paraphrase of it. If you think you're a leader and no one is following, you're just out for a walk. If you're going to follow somebody, you have to follow them. The older that I get, the more my wonderful, amazing children just destroy any energy that I have left. The more I need things to be very simple. Well, if you're going to follow Jesus, you got to follow Jesus. So if I asked you, what does it mean to follow Jesus? Would you have said, well, following him? No, because that seems redundant and kind of stupid. But at its core, that's what it is. You've got to follow. You've got to come after him. The word follow actually means, in the original language, it means like to come after, which makes sense, right? It can mean to be on their side. So you're going where they go. You're doing what they do. And Jesus continues talking. He says, if you try to hang on to your life, you're going to lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you'll save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world? So in other words, let me do my own paraphrase of this. What good does it do you if you do everything you want to do, but in the end, all that stuff's worthless anyway? Is anything worth more than your soul? For the Son of Man, and he's referencing himself there, For the Son of Man will come with his angels in the glory of his Father and will judge all people according to their deeds. So Jesus directly connects us following him to our actions. He says that what it looks like to follow is that we actually go where he goes, but beyond that, it's that we do what he does. This makes sense. Have you ever been on a road trip where you're like caravanning with other people? Does anyone enjoy that? Because I hate it. It's the worst. Unless you have two or however many drivers that drive the exact same way, it is a nightmare. Some of you are like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. It's great. You're that driver. You're the one. We're never going to caravan together. If I'm in the lead, like, keep up. Just keep up, please. That seems like a sensible thing to ask. If you're going to say I'm following, I shouldn't say this. My father-in-law is the worst about this. My wife is not here today. She's on her way to meet them. When we're caravanning, it's either that I'm driving slightly over the... Look, I speed a little bit. It's not bad. I set cruise so it doesn't get bad. It's either... it would get real bad. It's either that he is all of a sudden gone in the rearview mirror, or he's beside me. And I don't understand how those are the options. The option should be behind, right? I didn't write all that in my notes, but kind of got on a tangent. When you're in a caravan, you need somebody that's a leader, and you need people who can follow. What does it look like to follow? Well, you drive about the same speed. You take the same turns. The person in the lead has to be smart, and if a light's yellow, don't go through it, right? You've got to be able to have one person, another person, another person. If there's more than three, just stop. Follow, 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 follow. A follower is someone who does what the leader does, goes where the leader goes. In first century Jewish context, a follower was also known as a disciple. So if you remember in the passage I read just a moment ago, Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he's talking ultimately about what it means to be a disciple. A disciple was someone who followed what a rabbi did. A rabbi was a Jewish religious teacher, and disciples were people who literally would follow him around. You had to pass all this schooling, and once you did, then you could follow a rabbi around. And the whole purpose was that you walked so closely with that rabbi, with that teacher, that it wasn't that they were always imparting information. They did. They would teach. They would do that kind of thing. But often you were just watching what they did. You can think of it almost like an apprentice in our culture today. That's what a disciple did. They would just follow him around, watch everything they did, see how they would interact, and they were learning all the time. There was actually a saying, there was a saying in the first century, may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. Well, the only way you get covered in the dust of your rabbi is by following very, very, very closely to them. There was also a functional reason for this. If most rabbis would travel around, they would have like a home base, but they would travel around and do things. And as they walked, they would talk. And in order to hear what the rabbi was saying, you had to be close to the rabbi. So to be a follower, for us, we hear follower, and I don't necessarily think that we equate that with closeness sometimes. So I'm going where the leader goes, I'm doing what the leader does, and I'm doing it intentionally choosing to be very close so I don't miss anything along the way. Jesus, in the book of Matthew, we actually see the example of Jesus calling his first disciples, his first followers. And it's always been interesting to me because you'll see here in a moment, Jesus says some weird stuff. And then he says, follow me. And people are like, okay. So check this out. Matthew chapter 4, verse 19. Jesus called out to them, come follow me and I will show you how to fish for people. It's not how I would have led. These are fishermen. Okay, Jesus is actually kind of, they're on a beach. They're hauling in their nets from their day's work. And Jesus is like, hey, come with me. I'm going to show you how to fish for people. That's enticing. No, it's not. If you're those guys, you're going to be like, yeah, okay, that sounds great. No, you're going to be like, I got some questions. What's that mean? Oh, who are you? Where are we going? Let's get some details worked out first. Let's get some logistics in place. But no, the response is they left their nets at once and followed him. And then it says a little farther up the shore, he saw two other brothers, James and John, sitting in a boat with their father Zebedee, repairing their nets. And he called for them to come too, and they immediately followed him, leaving the boat and their father behind. Those stories have always struck me as fascinating. Like, who does that? Why would you do that? Also, how angry are you if you're the dad? Like, hey, we got nets, we're not done. And yet, Jesus had that authority that when he would say, come follow me, people just trusted him. They believed that something good was going to happen. But here's the most fascinating thing to me. There's nothing else given. Come follow me. Come follow me. No plan. Some of you are you're like, I need details. Some of you who are more like me and a little bit more easygoing, you're like, maybe. Right? But even for those of us who are super easy, there's problems here. I mean, give me something. Give me a little bit of an idea what we're doing. Come follow me. Come follow me. Come follow me. Leave your nets, your dad will be all right. Come follow me. A disciple is someone who follows. The best image that I could come up with in my mind for this is like a mama duck and her babies. You know? You see pictures or see a video of some mama duck and her babies crossing. It's so cute. Traffic stopped. Everybody in the line of traffic's mad. But the baby ducks are cute. But do you ever see a mama duck walking with baby ducks everywhere? They're in a line. All they know is that mama's safe. If we stay with mama, we're going to be all right. Little do they know that's not actually true. But people will stop for the baby ducks. Follow, follow, follow. And each one of them is just looking at the next one. And they end up in the right spot. A disciple is someone who follows. So how do you follow Jesus? You go where he goes. You walk where he walks. You step where he steps. One of the things that I'm deeply passionate about as a pastor, as a spiritual. Sometimes I think of myself as a spiritual tour guide. Maybe that sounds weird, but I gotta help people get to Jesus. I'm not trying to get people to follow me. I'm trying to get people to follow Jesus. I got to show you how great he is, how amazing, and then maybe you want to follow him too. One of the things that I'm deeply passionate about is helping people understand the simplicity of following Jesus. It's not complex. It's not complicated. And it burdens me when I hear people say things like, "Well, I'm afraid I'm not following Jesus right," or "I'm afraid maybe I'm on the wrong path." Have you ever felt that way in your faith? Am I really on the right path? You think a baby duck ever wonders if they're on the wrong path? No. Why? Because they're just following a duck. They're just taking whatever steps. They're not thinking about it. They're just going, Mama knows what she's doing, so I'm going to follow her. That's it. So I can give you a foolproof way to 100% guarantee you will never be on the wrong path in your faith, in your life. Okay? Here it is. To follow Jesus, take the next step he's showing you. That's it. That's it. Because he'll show you steps. He will. If you want to know where to go, if you want to follow him, if you are pursuing him the best you know how in your life, he will show you steps to take. And if you take them, you'll never end up in the wrong spot. Ever. Ever. It's so easy to overcomplicate this. Following Jesus is like that baby duck just following mama duck. Where's she going? I don't know. But I know she's taking me somewhere that's going to be good. So she took a step there, I'm going to take a step there. Now there, now there. Just take the next step that he shows you. There is, I realize, a problem with this, which is that Jesus isn't literally walking in front of you for you to see where to step. And I think this is where the confusion sets in. Because we try our best, don't we? And we put forth the effort that we know to put forth, and we try to listen, but sometimes it doesn't seem like Jesus is talking to us. Sometimes maybe there's like more than one good option, and we don't know what to do. So like, God, what should I do? And then there's crickets, right? Anybody ever been there in their faith? And then what happens? You try your best to make a good choice, and then at some point down the road you go, oh, is that the right one? Especially if it doesn't go well. So the inherent problem with taking the next step that God shows you, whatever that step may be, is how do we know? I mean, it was easy with the disciples following Jesus. There's the guy, walk. It's a lot harder now. But it's kind of not. How do we do this? There's 3 verses that I want to show you, one from Proverbs, one from Isaiah, one from the Psalms. And there were a whole bunch that I could have picked, but these 3 just stood out to me. Proverbs chapter 16 says, we can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. God has a path. He's got a path. He's got a road. Isaiah chapter 48. This is what the Lord says, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. He says, I am the Lord your God who teaches you what is good for you and who leads you along the paths you should follow. He'll show us what's good. He'll lead us along the paths we should take. We don't have to try to figure it out on our own. Last one, Psalm 119. This is my favorite. Your word is a lamp to guide my feet and a light for my path. It's a lamp for my feet and a light for my path. Now, pause for a moment here. I love this psalm. But we lose some context if we don't take a second and step back from our understanding of the world. This psalm was written 3,000 years ago. The world was slightly different 3,000 years ago. So in the context in which David writes, your word is a lamp to guide my feet and a light for my path. His worldview of a lamp for my feet and a light for my path is taking a literal lamp with a wick and a flame and holding it down low when it is pitch black outside, because, we're not in the middle of the city of Columbus where there's light all the time. So pitch black, I've got a light. How far do you imagine that candle flame would light up? Not super far, most likely. A few steps. But at the end of the day, when David writes, your word is a lamp to guide my feet and a light for my path, he's not saying you're going to illuminate the journey for me. You're going to show me everything that needs to happen. He's just saying, show me what's next. You'll show me what's next. See, this is where I think a lot of us get really hung up. We want to know the end destination. Because in everything in our life, we get to do this. When's the last time you went on a trip and as you were driving, you looked at a road map as you were going to figure out where to go next? Has anyone done that in their entire life? A couple of you are brave. No, we get on Google Maps. If you use Apple Maps, switch. We get on Google Maps and we type in a destination and we say get directions and it just spits it all out for us. And if we want to know the details, we click on the little down arrow. And we view all the turns along the way and all the roads. And if we're a little bit more brave and trusting, we just let it tell us. Which, by the way, is kind of insane, isn't it? But it's great. We just let it tell us. And then we go where it says to go. And we do what it says. And wouldn't you know it, we end up where we wanted to go in the first place. But see, God doesn't operate like Google Maps. He doesn't give us the whole journey most of the time. He just gives us a step. And then it's up to us to decide, am I going to take it or am I not? So, following Jesus is not that complicated. It's hard. I mean, remember, Jesus said at the beginning, he said, you have to give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. He's saying you have to die to yourself. It can't be about you anymore. You can't make your own choices. You can't go your own way, because if you're going your own way, you're probably not going my way. You're just one of those bad followers. So make a choice. Are you willing to do things my way? Are you willing to just follow in my footsteps? He says, I'll teach you what's good, and I'll lead you along the paths you should follow. So here's the thing. You've got to be dialed in. You've got to be tuned in to God's voice to do this. Anybody remember radios? You remember radios with a dial? Some of you are like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's terribly sad for you. When you have a radio with a dial, right, you don't push a button and it scans and finds it. What do? You turn the dial and you listen. And then all at once you start to something. It's just like that. It was perfect. And then all at once, like, something will come in and it'll be clear, and you stop and you listen for a moment to see, what is it? Is this something I want to listen to? Nah, it's classical music. Let's keep going. Nah, that's the Cleveland Indians. Let's keep going. Sorry, Jake. You turned it out. I remember when I was, I don't know, probably 10 or 12-ish. I'm a diehard Cincinnati Reds fan, which this year is good, kind of. But when I was about 10 or 12, at the time, 610 WTVN played Reds games. And it was great because it came in clear on the radio. Then all of a sudden, they stopped playing Reds games because the Reds were really bad for a long time. So I must have been older than 10 or 12 because we were still good in 95. Probably like, I don't know. It doesn't matter. The point is, all of a sudden, I had to try to find 700 WLW on the radio. And that was a bear. So you get it right around 700, and you're like, it start to come in, and you just turn the dial a little bit, and then you get fuzzy again. And try. So here's the thing. That's a little bit like how the voice of the Holy Spirit is in our lives sometimes. We've got to like really dial it in. And if you don't know what you're listening for, then you're probably going to get yourself into some trouble. But at its core, following Jesus, that's all it is. It's taking the next step that he has for you, whatever that step is. You'll end up in the right spot if you always take whatever step he has next. If you're trying to figure it out on your own, if you're trying to do your own thing, you won't. You'll keep wandering and meandering. It's just never going to quite work. But in order to know what the step is, you've got to be tuned into God's voice in your life. If you can do those things, then following Jesus gets really fun. Because you don't worry about where you're heading. You don't concern yourself with the destination because you know the destination is good. You know it's better than what you could come up with anyway. And you have freedom and joy in knowing, like, I don't know what the next step is beyond the one God's put in front of me, but I know if I take it, God's going to do great things with it. And you lose kind of the fear, and you lose the worry and the anxiety around, like, well, am I really pleasing God? So this is why some religious habits really matter. Like reading the Bible matters. Praying matters. But it's not so you can check off a spiritual box. It's because those are the things that help tune you into the voice of God. It's because those are the things that then as you start to get the radio dial, you start to hear something coming through, you can listen to it and go, is that God or is it not? But if you never spend time getting to know God, you can't know his voice. And you'll just keep searching. So to follow Jesus, you just take the next step he's showing you. And I want to give you something very practical to do. If you want to get better at following Jesus, which, by the way, if you're a Christian, you should want to get better. I don't care how long you've been following. We can all get better. I want to give you one very simple, practical thing to do, and that's pray every day. Pray, what's my next step? Show me, and I will follow you. That's it. Just ask. Because here's the thing. If you ask God to do that, he will do it. Because his desire is to lead you. His desire is to guide you. His desire is to walk you through life, showing you the right paths to take so that you can make an impact in the world around you for him, and so that ultimately one day you'll get to spend eternity with him. He wants to show you the right paths to take. He wants to show you the right steps to take. So if you ask, he will do it. The question then is, are you listening and are you tuned in to hear what he has to say? And will you do it? So here's the thing. I know this works. Like, I know it does. And I don't know it does because the Bible tells me so. It was actually a little bit hard to find certain passages to illustrate some of this because there's nothing directly that says like this exact thing in the Bible. It's kind of the principle throughout. But here's how I know it works. Because since I was 5 years old, I've been trying to serve and follow Jesus. And my life has taken some, what at the time seemed like very meandering turns. What at the time seemed like moments that made no sense. But at the end of the day, my heart has always been to follow and serve God. And I've done the best that I knew at every step of my life to follow him. Sometimes it got messy. So I gave my life to Jesus when I was 5. I've said many times, like, I don't have some crazy, I never was like real rebellious. I just never had any desire to do a lot of stuff that people do to kind of test the waters of life. God called me into ministry when I was 15, and at the time I thought I was going to be a youth pastor the rest of my life because like pizza and video games sounded cool. And so I went to Mount Vernon Nazarene University to pursue a degree in Christian education and youth ministry. My freshman year of college, I couldn't actually take Christian ed classes. It's a little bit complicated, but I was a full-time post-secondary student, and since the state was paying for my education, I couldn't take religion classes. So I had to take all my gen eds. While I was taking my gen eds, I began to hear horror stories about some of the upper-level religion professors. And I went, nuh-uh. So I changed my major to computer science. It was my backup plan. That was a funny year. I won Computer Science Freshman of the Year. I won't tell you how, but let's just say it wasn't all my work. And I just heard my mom sigh. It was mostly my work, but sometimes I didn't know what to do and I got help. When I went onto the stage to receive my Computer Science Freshman of the Year award, I had already changed my major to music. It's like, I'll be a worship leader. I'm not taking those religion professors. I'll be a worship leader. And I was a music major for a year. And then about, I don't know, a couple months before the end of what should have been, or what was my junior year, I called home and I said, Mom and Dad, I'm changing my major again. I don't remember how the conversation went. I don't imagine that it was the smoothest one we ever had. I said, I just knew like I had to change it back to youth ministry. So just a few weeks before I finished my junior year of college, I changed my major to youth ministry, of which I had 0 credits, and I completed my youth ministry degree in 2 years. That was a little bit meandering, but here's the thing. Every step along the way, I genuinely was trying to seek what God wanted in my life. Sure, there was fear involved, and I probably didn't make the best choices at certain points in time, but I was genuinely trying to pursue what God wanted. In the end, that whole journey led me to take a job as a youth pastor in Winfield, West Virginia. That job ended up kind of being a train wreck, but it was the right move at that point in time. I then left that job to go be a youth pastor in Maysville, Kentucky, and work for my best friend. Many of you have heard that story. Let's just say it did not end well. And it threw my life into turmoil 2.5 years later. I ended up from there going to another church to be at what I thought I was going to be a music and youth pastor. But a couple weeks in, I realized that wasn't what the church needed most. So I pitched a completely different job description to my boss, and I took it. And about 6 months after that, God began to stir in my heart to come home and plant a church for people like me who had been hurt and broken by the church. And here's what I can tell you through all of that mess. Every step along the way, God was guiding me on the right paths. It's not like the most pretty story you've ever heard. It's not the most direct line. I don't do direct lines real well. But every single step along the way, God was leading and shaping and making me into who he needed me to be for right now. For right now. And every step along the way, this is a prayer that I have prayed for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. God, just show me what's next. In fact, when I was pursuing ordination in my former denomination, which I just used a lot of really churchy words, when I was doing the educational side of becoming a pastor in the denomination that I was a part of, I had to do these interviews, and they would ask me all these like deep theological questions. And one of the questions they would always ask, which is really condescending now that I think about it, was like, do you see yourself being a youth pastor for the rest of your life? At the time I'm 25, 26, and there's sort of just this assumption that you're going to age out of being a youth pastor at some point. So I asked, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Do you think you're going to be a youth pastor your whole life? Or do you imagine that at some point you'll graduate to the big leagues and be a senior pastor? And I didn't know how else to answer it even then. And I would always answer, I have no idea. Because I don't know what God's going to want me to do. And in every interview that I ever had to give pursuing my ordination, I would say to them, I'm going to do this for as long as God asks me to. And when he asks me to do something different, I'll do that. Never in a million years knowing that I would be a senior pastor, a lead pastor of a church plant. I never wanted to be a church planter. I never wanted to come back to Sunbury, none of that stuff. But every step along the way, I just tried to listen to the voice of God. In fact, I didn't even have this in my notes, but when we first pursued the church plant, some of you know that we launched out of Genoa Middle School in Westerville. What you may not know is why. Because I hated Sunbury. I didn't even look for venues in Sunbury. I looked for venues in Westerville because I liked Westerville in high school. And about a year and a half in, God changed my heart one final time, and he said, go home. And so I did. And I'm not saying that because I don't want any pats on the back, any kudos. It doesn't matter. I want you to know that when you work this process, the process works. I want you to know that when you make it your lifestyle, your habit, to simply ask God consistently, whether it's it doesn't matter. I put on the back of your sheet, like, write this down on an index card and put it somewhere you see it every day. And every time you see it, just say it. What's my next step? Show me and I'll follow. What's my next step? Show me and I'll follow. That takes 2.5 seconds. It ain't going to impact your day, but it'll completely change the course of your life. Because following Jesus is about following Jesus. So, very quickly, let me finish up. A really interesting thing about being in church leadership, about being a pastor, and even in being in staff ministry for years, is that people have a tendency to look at what the church does as like, oh, the church is trying to serve it's trying to do better things for itself and get more people. And I've said many times, like, when you successfully pastor a church from 47 to 41 in 3 years, your ego's out of it anymore, which is our story, by the way. I've never tried to create church programming to get people busy or to go look at the stats here. Look at how many people came to Serve Day yesterday. We didn't even count, actually. We had to have a back, wait, do we know how many people were here? But what we do is we orient our church around next steps. So everything we do is designed to give you a step to take in your faith. Everything. And so if you're not sure what to do next, let me give you some options that you could take here if you wanted to, that will spur your faith on. The first is, and I can't be more serious about this, if you're new to faith and you have not been baptized, get baptized. Again, we have a meeting today after the service is over. Meeting's not even a great word. It's just, I'm going to give you a little bit of information. It's going to be about 10, 15 minutes. You can ask questions if you want, but it's just about what baptism is here at City North. That's it. So if you have made a decision to give your life to Jesus and you've never been baptized, stick around today. I'll tell you what it looks like. You can make a choice. You can get baptized. You can join a small group. Joining a small group is life-changing if you've never been a part of a healthy small group. You can make a decision to join a church family, this one or another one. I don't care. I just want you in a healthy church family where people will love you and encourage you and walk alongside you in your life. You could make a choice to be a part of 21 Days of Prayer, which will be kicking off in about a month, to develop your prayer life and really deepen your relationship with God and kind of tune you into the Holy Spirit. You could join a team at City North. You could be a part of look at how cool that looks over there. If you can drum, you can go play the drums in that cool looking thing. If you don't play the drums, you cannot do that. You could greet. You could go be a part of City North Kids and help impact future world changers. We don't fill spots here. We try to help people find what God's gifted them with and then unleash them inside that. So you could join a team. You could begin giving financially. That's all I'm going to say on that, because people get real weird when you start talking about that. You could become a small group leader and use your life to impact a whole bunch of people for God. I don't know what it looks like for you. I don't know what next steps God has for you. But I know that if you're following him, there is one. And I know that if you ask him what it is, he will tell you. And if you make it a habit in your life, a pattern in your life, to ask what the next step is and then simply take it when he shows you, you will never be on the wrong path. Your life will end up better than you could have ever imagined. And you'll have joy and you'll have peace within it. Let me pray for us. God, thanks for today and thanks for your love and your grace. God, thank you that you lead us. Thank you that you guide us. Thank you that we don't have to figure this all out on our own. But thank you that you are a God who shows up and who is consistent. That you are a God who doesn't fail us. That you're a God who, when we ask, you pay attention. Thank you that you're a God that when we submit ourselves to you and when we make a choice to follow you, you lead us. And not only do you lead us, but thank you that we can trust that even when the journey looks like things that we didn't imagine, or that when the journey takes turns and twists that we would not have picked. Thank you that even when the journey takes turns that are painful and that are very difficult, thank you that even in those moments we know we can trust you because you have never failed. And so God, for every person that's here today, I ask that you would show us the next steps you have for us, whatever those are. God, I ask that you would help tune our hearts to your voice. God, surround us with people who can give us wise, godly counsel, who, when we don't know what to do, when we don't know where to turn, who can help lead us and guide us to follow you more closely. God, and ultimately for all of us, as we make a choice to follow you in our lives, keep your promises. Lead us along good paths. Fill us with life and fill us with joy so that we can show the world how much you love them. Before we finish up, I want to give an opportunity today. Talking about following Jesus is great, but again, following Jesus is about following Jesus. And it starts with a simple choice to begin following him. See, for some of us, we've kind of gotten to the point where we look at following Jesus as if it's a religious thing. If I go to church enough times, if I give some money, if I get involved in this or do that or this, and we make it into a religious performance thing, and that's never what it was. From the very beginning, following Jesus was always just about saying, I've been doing my own thing, but now I'm going to change my direction and I'll follow you. And so if you're here today and you've never made that choice, you've never simply chosen to change your direction and follow Jesus, I want to give you that opportunity. The Bible teaches us that if we believe in our heart that Jesus was raised from the dead, and if we speak with our mouth that he's in control, that he'll save us. That's it. No religious stuff. Believe that he died and was raised from the dead, and speak with our mouth that we're going to change our direction and follow him. So if you're here today and you've never made that choice, but you want to, because you want to know you're on the right track, you want to be led along good paths, it begins with that choice. If you want to make that choice today, I'm going to invite you to say a simple prayer of faith alongside us. Here in a moment, I'm going to lead a prayer out, and everybody that's here, we're just going to say it together out loud. We're not going to draw attention to you, call you out, anything like that. But if you're here today and you want to make that choice, just simply pray this prayer alongside us, and God will hear from heaven. He knows your heart, and he will save you. So if that's you today, simply pray along with me. Say, Jesus, I believe in you. I've been going my own way, but today I want to change directions, and I want to follow you. I believe you died for me, and I believe you rose from the dead. So today I surrender to you. I give you control. Lead me. Show me my next steps, and I'll follow you. It's in the mighty name of Jesus Christ today we pray, amen. Hey, put your hands together for anybody that may have made that choice. If you did make that choice today, let me be the first to say congratulations. And if you made a choice to give your life to Jesus for the very first time, or maybe you kind of walked away from that relationship, but you just want to come back to it, I would invite you to fill out the green card that's in the seat back in front of you. Write your name, write your email, and just check the box that says I made a decision to follow Jesus. That gives our team the opportunity to pray for you. And it gives me the opportunity to reach out via email and send you some next steps you can take if you would like to, and some actions you can do with that. So please, if you made that choice, have the courage to fill that card out. Drop it in the silver buckets on your way out the doors today, so we can be in touch. All right? Guys, thank you so much for being here today. Again, a reminder, if you're interested in baptism at City North, you're not signing up or committing to anything, but stick around just right up here after the service is over, and we'll start that in about 10 minutes or so, okay? So hang out for baptism meeting if you are interested in that. Thank you guys. Have a great week. Stay dry. Don't walk through Lake City North. See you next Sunday.